1 Charlie. Mark, 1 Charlie.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'm full of optimism.
Einstein's theory of relativity.
And we're still seeing it quite well through that haze.
T-minus 37 seconds.
The fight with growing confidence.
E equals
14,
MC.
13.
That all men are created equal.
About the future innovations.
And growing strength in the air.
Ignition sequence.
Tear down this wall.
Something's happening. Coming up on staging.
This is Finding Your Frequency with your hosts, Jeff Spinard and Ryan Treasure. It's time to speak up, share your voice, and hear from the thought leaders.
And welcome back to Finding Your Frequency. I'm your host, Jeff Spinard.
I'm your co-host, Ryan Treasure. Welcome back.
And we have a very, very special guest with us today, Miss Sharon Lechter. How are you, Sharon?
I am fantastic and delighted to be here with you.
Excellent. We are very happy to have you. Let me give the audience a little background, and then we'll pick it up from there. Sharon Lechter is internationally recognized as a financial literacy expert and keynote speaker. She is a New York Times bestselling author, successful entrepreneur, philanthropist, licensed CPA, and chartered global management accountant. She is the founder and CEO of Pay Your Family First, a financial education organization providing the tools and mentorship supporting families, women, and entrepreneurs. Sharon has a passion for financial literacy and entrepreneurship to inspiring individuals and businesses for over 30 years. Credited as the genius behind the Rich Dad brand, Sharon is currently partnered with the Napoleon Hill Foundation. As a driving force behind these two mega brands, Sharon has demonstrated her entrepreneurial vision and expertise empowering audiences with messages of hope and prosperity. Sharon is the author of the best-selling books Think and Grow Rich for Women, Outwitting the Devil, 3 Feet from Gold, and Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and 14 other Rich Dad books. Sharon, welcome to the show. I could have sat here for days and just kept going.
It just tells you how old I am.
It's wisdom. So, Sharon, Finding Your Frequency, we always kind of start off with the journey as to how you found your frequency. Let's go back to where you want to go back to. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Well, I'll try and give you the Cliff Notes version.
Okay.
All right. I was the first generation of my family to go to college. So my parents' dream was that their daughters would get a college education. And so I went off and started my career back in the mid-70s in Atlanta as a CPA. And the goal was I would be there and become partner and retire and have the good old gold watch, all of that good stuff. And at the ripe old age of 25, when we knew everything, right? Remember that?
Right, yes, yeah. I do.
The entrepreneurial bug bit me, and I had a client invite me to go into a business where I would own a piece of the rock. And I said, well, if I'm going to work this hard, I should work for myself, not for someone else, right? It was the worst business decision of my life. I got there, and there was all kinds of corruption in this company, and I ran away scared to death. I came back, and the company had been involved with some litigation, and I met one of the attorneys. His name was Michael Lechter, and in 2 weeks we'll be celebrating 37 years of marriage.
Awesome.
And Napoleon Hill says, out of every adversity comes a seed of an equal or greater benefit. I got instant feedback, right? I had it's still the worst business decision of my life, but it was...
led you to?
But led me the best life decisions.
Yep.
So we have to always not define ourselves by our mistakes, but see what doors of opportunity they open.
Love it.
Got married, had kids, met the inventor of the first talking children's book and helped grow that business globally. Time when bookstores were very quiet places. And so it was really a lot of fun. It was books that had the sound strips down the side. So we went built that 23, almost $52 million in the 4th year when we sold it.
Very nice.
That's when we moved here to Arizona. That was 1991. Our oldest son, Philip, graduated from high school, went off to college, came home at Christmas and told us he was in credit card debt. I was pretty mad. I was mad at him, but more mad at myself. And that was December of 1992, and that's really when I dedicated the rest of my career to financial education, financial literacy. Fast forward a few years, 1996 is when I met Robert Kiyosaki and helped him commercialize the game cash flow.
Right.
And in the process of doing that, so he wanted to charge $200 for this game. And I said, we probably should write a brochure that kind of explains the philosophy. And so we wrote a little brochure called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Most people don't know that. But it was actually written as a giveaway, not as something that the world would see our brand not as cash flow, but as Rich Dad. So we thought we'd write one book, and then it was so successful, well, maybe we'll do 3. So we did the trilogy, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant, Rich Dad's Guide to Investing. Thought that would be the journey there, but oh no, it kept going 15 books later. And so 10 years after we joined as partners and I led the company as CEO, we were no longer aligned to what we wanted to do, so I made the decision to leave. And I tell people sometimes you have to close one door for other doors of opportunity to open. And so a few months later, I got a call from President Bush asking me to be on the first President's Advisory Council for Financial Literacy, and had no idea that was coming. But at the same time, I wouldn't have gotten that call had I still been at Rich Dad. And then 2 or 3 months later, I got the phone call from Don Green, the CEO of the Napoleon Hill Foundation. We all know what was happening to the economy in 2008. And so they asked me to help reinvigorate the teachings of Napoleon Hill, and the rest is history. I've been working alongside them as well as my own company, Pay Your Family First, ever since.
That is fantastic. In fact, some of this was news. When you talk about the Rich Dad, Poor Dad series and some of the things that went on, didn't know about that till after, and I've known you for a while. I mean, we're not personal friends and call each other, but we have seen each other on occasions, and did not even know about that until afterwards. But you mentioned financial literacy and family. I do want to say congratulations to you for being a new grandmother.
Thank you. I am absolutely thrilled.
And we have something for you.
Oh,
yeah, Jeff made a little stop on his way in this morning.
Oh, my goodness.
A little something
my goodness.
for Annalise, right?
Annalise Scales.
Annalise.
How exciting.
Yep, and congratulations to Shelley and Jeff, your daughter, and...
Love it. I love it. I love it.
Good. There you go. There's a little something from Voice America. So
excellent.
Okay. And I can tell you firsthand how much little girls love those bears.
Yes.
I have a 4-year-old at home, and she had a little bear when she was born, too.
Well, she's still got a big bear that she uses as a chair.
Daddy bear?
She sits in it and reads in it. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So let me ask you, going back to the book series, you've written so many best-selling books. What is your favorite book that you didn't write?
That I didn't write?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Well, obviously, probably the Bible would have to be the number one from my perspective of my favorite. Think and Grow Rich, obviously, is something that I read when I was 19. I didn't realize the impact it would have on my life until I was in my mid-30s. I still think today it's as valid today as it was when it was released in 1937. So second to the Bible would be Think and Grow Rich. Excellent.
Okay, I noticed that you have an article in a very big magazine, the Oprah magazine and Fortune. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a huge honor. They reached out to me and said we want to highlight women in business in the greater Phoenix area. I think there's 3 or 4 of us that they've highlighted. And to provide that kind of opportunity, it was wonderful. They want to talk about the work that I've done. They titled the article "Making a Difference," and it was a huge honor. And to have that, we were on Oprah, the television show, back in 2000 with Rich Dad Poor Dad. So it's kind of we've kind of come full circle. So it's kind of fun.
Excellent.
Yeah, Oprah's been doing a lot of cool things with the O Network, and we have another show on the network with Andrea Matthews that they cross-pollinate content for O and stuff like that. So seeing this in the magazine for Future and for Oprah, it's really cool and nicely laid out, very well done. I read this as well, and it's very nice.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. It's most impressive. I mean, when you're in the bigger magazines, now it's nice to get any kind of publicity, but when you start hitting Fortune and Oprah magazine, you know that you've accomplished some greatness in your life, and you have accomplished a lot of greatness, and you continue to strive and move forward. I think that's so awesome. So, kudos to you. Tell us a little bit about the financial literacy program that you work with.
Well, money is a life skill.
Yes.
I mean, we teach our kids in school about condoms, but we don't teach them about money. And that's something that I've been dedicated to trying to change. Here in Arizona, I was successful in getting the law changed 4 years ago so that high school students have to have personal finance before they graduate from high school. And it's something that has to be done state by state. So I'm supporting other people across the country who are trying to get the same type of legislation passed in their states. And then last year I was working very closely with Matt Salmon before he retired. And it hasn't happened yet, but we're still working on a nationwide bill that would require anyone getting a student loan, because I truly believe our next financial bubble is the level of student loan debt out there. And I think if we're going to give somebody money, we should teach them how to use it. So I think that part of the process of getting a student loan should be a requirement for some financial education. And that bill, we got partially there last year, but with all the other stuff going on, we're going to have to give it new life this year. So we're looking forward to that.
Right. Good. So what do you think the most important thing in terms of financial education that a parent can teach their child?
Understanding the fact that by the age of 3, a child knows the difference between a $1 bill and a $20 bill. So they know the spending power.
Absolutely.
That is you.
They need the spending power, but they don't understand the earning power. And so a lot of people say, I don't want to teach my kids about money. I don't want to become greedy. Well, they already do, because if they only learn that side of the equation, if they only learn how to spend it, then it really breeds that entitlement mentality. And so, in fact, I did an interview this morning on allowance, and I say, part of I don't want to tell parents how to parent, but I think allowance can sometimes be a crippling tool because the kids put their hand out and expect to get paid.
I agree.
And so, I say, well, instead of yes or no, let's talk about responsibilities. A child has personal responsibilities. They shouldn't be paid an allowance for brushing their teeth or making their bed. They have family responsibilities, so maybe doing the dishes is part of that. They shouldn't get paid allowance for that. Social responsibilities. Maybe your neighbor is an old lady that needs help with a trash can. Those are things that they learn levels of being part of a community, whether it just be the family or your local community. And then allowing them to identify ways where they can earn money, cleaning out a closet, helping with the garage, going over and above those other categories, give them the opportunity to create that entrepreneurial mindset. And parents
absolutely agree with that. Wow.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point, and I was telling you earlier, I have a 4-year-old, and one of the things that my wife and I started doing from the moment our daughter could tangibly touch anything was, literally put dollar bills in her hands and coins in her hands and just let her, just understand what it was, and not be afraid of anything that comes of, that. And Jeff has witnessed a couple times. We bring Marley in, and we're like, oh, what coin is this? What is this? And she knows all the way from a penny to a quarter what they are, and knows ones, fives, tens, and 20s. I gave her a $100 bill one time, and she thought it was like a $20 bill. So I had to, we're working on her just kind of identifying and understanding those things.
She's
but
4.
Yeah, but I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying with the social responsibility and the home responsibility. You can't pay your kids to do those things, because ultimately, how are they ever learned that those things they need to do themselves when they're on their own too? Not necessarily also the psychological component of how they earn or spend money. I think it does make them maybe a little lazy.
Well, our kids naturally are very curious and creative when they go to school. That curiosity is what creates imagination and gets people thinking of new ways to solve problems. And once they go into public school or even private school, they're taught conformity. And conformity is something that is needed to live appropriately in a community, but you need to balance that with creativity and curiosity. And what happens, I think, is that the balance gets shifted. People get into a career, they get comfortable, they get complacent, and all of a sudden they're not creative, they're not curious. And then we have a crisis in our life, and our life gets thrown into chaos. And so how do we get out of that? All of a sudden, at that point in time, we become more curious and creative again. So if we can keep our children curious and creative, we can build children who are seeking always to create value in life.
I love that. And with 5 kids and 10 grandkids myself,
wow.
Been up and down the spectrum, some of and of course I get into fights with my now ex-wife. I used to get into fights with her because money to her was just okay, we always got more coming. And I grew up, learning the lessons from my parents on the value of a dollar and how to earn that dollar and, think of creative ways, to make it all possible. So I love everything you're saying, and I am with you 1,000%. And financial literacy for the families, I think, is so important. So important.
Well, at the end of the day, we're either a master of our money or a slave to it.
Yeah.
You make the choice. Do you want your children to be masters of their money or slaves?
Right.
Because whatever you're doing with them today is going to predetermine that, because we learn our money habits at home. And so it's very important. And many parents are afraid. They themselves need to learn about money, and so they don't teach their kids because they don't want their children to understand that they have a fault. And so I say, do it together. I have a game called Thrive Time for Teens. It's a great way, keeps it safe, it's not personal, and you can teach kids about the value of money and the life decisions that they make, because financial education is a life skill. Once you get, it's a gift of a lifetime.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ryan, do you want to?
Yeah, I was going to ask what kind of advice you would have for someone like me who has a 4-year-old to make sure that doesn't happen, because I swear that's like my worst fear is my kid growing up being just like this snotty little I've got everything I ever wanted in life and doesn't understand what it means to work for a living or any of that kind of stuff.
That's on you, buddy.
I know, man. I'm trying. That's my worst fear for my daughter.
Well, I will tell you, my greatest advice to you is the power of the question, because our children are brilliant. Allow yourself to continue to give your child the opportunity to be creative and to think through the answers. Too many times you want to give them the answers. And we have to watch our languaging. Everyone listening to this show or watching it has sometimes said, I can't afford it, or we can't afford it. And that's a negative statement. It closes your brain. You kind of want to shrink when you hear that, right? And so I say, catch yourself. And instead of saying we can't afford it, say, how can we afford it?
Oh, that's great.
By just asking that question, you expand your brain, you actually induce the entrepreneurial thinking and then it also makes you think, do I really want it?
Sure.
Yeah, we're about to go through that practice actually right now. Our daughter's kind of in that transitional, she's a toddler, but she thinks she's a big girl, doesn't want to, sleep in the convertible crib kind of thing anymore. And so we're working towards that. And she says, I want a new room. And I'm like, all right, well, we're going to have to figure that out and what you want to do. And, showed her some pictures, and she wants this bed and that kind of stuff. And I know I'm probably giving my 4-year-old way too much leeway on what she gets to pick out. But I want her to be happy with what we put into her room, so that way she's comfortable with it. But at the same time, I'm also trying to teach her that, just because you want something doesn't mean I run to the store and bring it home, right? You have all of these stuffed animals that you no longer play with. So we're taking pictures of all of them, and we're putting them up on like OfferUp and selling some of them and giving some of them away and donating them. So I'm trying to turn it into a learning experience with her of, well, hey, you want this? Well, you're not old enough to get a job. I'll get in trouble if I give you one. And then how can we sell things that you don't want to create capital for you to get what you want?
Sounds like we have somebody for you to work with.
Well, it sounds like you're thinking at it very early on, and that's very important, because that makes a lifetime of difference when you can start thinking about how you can trigger that thinking and let her participate in what toys she's willing to give to other children. Yeah. Not just that the toys have disappeared, but say, we have to make room for new if you want new. So let's see, what do you have that we can let somebody that's less fortunate benefit from?
That's great.
And build in that concept of generosity.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's awesome.
Okay, listen, let's take a short commercial break. When we come back, I want to talk about some of your travels coming up.
Ladies and gentlemen, go check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/Voice America Talk Radio, and of course on our website, findingafrequency.net. And we'll be right back right after these messages with our special guest, Sharon Lechter. Stay tuned.
And welcome back to Finding Your Frequency. I'm your host, Jeff Spinard.
I'm your co-host, Ryan Treasure.
And we are here with Sharon Lechter. Sharon learned so much already. You're such a busy professional. You do a lot of traveling. You do a lot of speaking events. And, of course, obviously, that's why you're traveling. You've got a hectic schedule. Tell us a little bit about life on the road.
Well, You think about for the last 3 years, I kept saying, I'm going to back off, I'm going to slow down a little bit. I have failed at that endeavor.
Yeah.
But part of it is the opportunity to when I'm invited somewhere, if I can possibly make it happen, I will, because that's my giving back at this point, and trying to support people that are really trying to take their financial lives to the next level. I was just in Vancouver with Action Coach. It was wonderful to talk to their coaches from around the globe. And then in a couple of weeks, I head to India. Bangalore will be there. There's an event that's being formed called 10X Business Growth, and so I'm looking forward to that. And then I'll be in Chicago for an event called Springboard, a women's event that's being formed by Sherry Mackesy, so I'm very excited. She's one of my clients. And then I'm off to, wherever. I'm going to be in
Right.
Canada at the end of September for Event of Champions. In October, I'll be in London for Event of Champions. And then I'll go from there. I'm going to be heading down to Bali and to Malaysia.
Oh, that's where we'll meet you, Bali.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the end of
Check that.
October, actually, before all that, I'll be in Austin doing an event called Breakthrough Marketing in Austin, Texas.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
So that's quite the hectic schedule. I guess Greta has to handle that for you.
Yes, thank God for Greta and for Angela, because people call me and say, "Can we schedule something?" I go, "Nope." When I touch my calendar, I get in trouble.
So tell us, when you're scheduled all over, when you're going to all these places, what your role is to what? You get up on stage and you're talking financial literacy.
Well, it depends on the event,
Okay.
Jeff. Oftentimes I'm speaking on entrepreneurship, the essential components of a successful business. Many times I'm talking about Think and Grow Rich for women.
Okay.
Other times I'm talking about teaching your kids and family finances, but it's primarily entrepreneurship or Think and Grow Rich for women. The Napoleon Hill concepts are usually the two topics. A lot of times I talk about the current global economic environment and how it's going to impact entrepreneurship, so I go more global in view, because I do speak so globally. I go around the world.
Right.
And so when I'm going to Africa, for instance, I make sure I understand what's happening there at that time and how I see that fitting into the global network, global economy. Same thing with India. As I'm going to India, I want to make sure that I'm being relevant to the audience that's there.
Exactly. Well, that's got to be a challenge. First of all, it's got to keep you feeling pretty good about what you're doing, and educated on what's current and what people need to know. What's the number one financial mistake that a startup business makes?
Well, they don't understand the timing of cash flow. We always hear people don't have enough money when they start out. Well, we really, from a standpoint of building a business today, you don't need as much money as you used to. The issue is strategic alliances and partnerships. But what happens is people, when they're looking at their financials and they're doing their business plan, they're not thinking about the timing. And so you have to buy stuff before you make your product, and then you have to bill your clients when you ship the product. And so there can be anywhere from minimum of 60 to 180 days between when you have to lay out money when you actually receive the sales. And that can be managed when you first start up by the right plans. But what happens is when you're hugely successful, that is exponential, because all of a sudden you've got tons of orders, but you don't have the cash to build the product. Mm-hmm. And so that happens a lot. I see it so many times when a huge element of success creates a financial problem for the company.
And you know what? I've seen that happen too on several occasions. It's learning to manage your finances, I think, is so crucial in business, because, when you have an influx of cash, business is going great, you got money in the bank, things are going good, so you decide to open that checkbook, probably a little more than you should at times. I could say we probably run into that a couple times ourselves. But again, we'll always recover and come back and, keep paving the way. But that's one of the big questions I wanted to ask you. What's next for Sharon Lechter?
Well, I'm actually working on 3 new books right now. One is Magic Key, again with Greg Reed, who I wrote 3 Feet from Gold with. So it's the next generation of people's CEOs who've been very successful, talking to them about their personal mantra, their secret sauce, per se. And that one is pretty much done. We're just about ready to choose a publisher for that. And I'm also working on Think and Grow Rich for the next generation, kind of targeted at those 20, 30-year-olds. And then also Think and Grow Rich for kids, which will be more of a graphic novel. And I'm very excited about those because those have been on my back burner for way too long, and I need to get them done. So.
You've got time to move them up now?
Well, I'm taking time. I'm making the time to move them up.
That's key. You got to make the time for the right projects, and you feel it when it's right. So,
I have a quick question. This is just kind of off the cuff one I just thought about. I listen to a lot of talk radio, and so when I hear about financial stuff, I always think about Dave Ramsey because I listen to a lot of talk radio. Do you guys have synergies in the way that you think about managing money? And if so, just maybe name one.
Well, Dave Ramsey is fantastic. He has a huge following, and I absolutely
it's a cult-like following.
Yeah, and I absolutely love the fact that it's tied, and it's grown so much through a lot of churches because it is that philosophy of giving back and being charitable, but also being a good steward of your money. So a good steward of your spirit, a good steward of your money. And so, yes, a lot of the concepts that I teach are very similar to Dave's. We do have some differences, but at the end of the day, everybody, somebody will find the answer they're seeking from Dave, and I'm thrilled. They may find the answer they're seeking from me. And so, he really, I would say his big primary focus on personal finance, where I do a lot of personal financial consulting and teaching, but most of mine is related to entrepreneurship and building businesses.
Awesome. Well, thanks for answering that. I'm in my head, I'm like, wait a minute. I wonder how they feel about each other. Do they have the same?
I have tremendous respect. He's built an incredible empire on helping millions of people. So how can you criticize that?
Yeah, agreed.
Can't. Absolutely not. So tell us more about the Pay Your Family First organization, how people can get involved.
Oh, absolutely. Everything, I'm involved in lots of different projects as you've just heard me share. So everything is found on SharonLechter.com, and it's LECHTER. Pay Your Family First is the name of the company that I formed when I left the Rich Dad organization in 2007. It's the company that coordinates all of our financial education initiatives, our game Thrive Time for Teens. It's the home of all of our events and seminars that we do, whether it be Think and Grow Rich for Women or whether it's essential components of a successful business. We have online programming related to Think and Grow Rich for Women. We have an online program called The Essential Components of a Successful Business, which I do with my husband, Michael Lechter, because as I mentioned, we've been married 37 years, and we have also been partners in supporting each other. He's an intellectual property attorney. He was the brilliant mind behind licensing of the talking books as well as the international licensing strategy behind Rich Dad. Nice. So he's still the smartest man I've ever met, and very proud to call him my husband and my dear friend. So, and so we did this event together, the program Essential Components of a Successful Business, because we kind of are yin and yang as it relates to building a business. And so together we kind of form the complete package and bring in other members of our team where we need to.
Very nice. As a team, do you guys travel together, or is he busy doing what he's doing, you're busy doing what you're doing? Or
Yes, and yes. Oftentimes I travel without him. Oftentimes we travel together. We'll be in India together, and then I will leave him and go to Chicago because it's a women's event. Okay. And then, so it's
so London he'll be going to, right?
Yes.
Because any other country or exotic, he's there, right? Well, I would be too. So.
He's also quite protective, so he doesn't want me necessarily traveling areas where he feels I should have protection.
Like Bali.
He should be, right?
He definitely should go to Bali with you, because that place is extremely dangerous.
Yeah, you never know where that sand crab's going to get you,
right?
So, we've discussed, a lot of different things, from books to articles. You do a podcast, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. What's going on with the podcast, or what do you do on the podcast?
The podcast is called Your Money, Your Business, Your Life. Again, because I cover all those categories, and I talk about fear outwitting the devil was all about how to conquer fear. So a lot of it is, what are you doing to hold yourself back? Your money, personal finance, understand the importance of your credit score, understanding the importance of good debt versus bad debt, and then, of course, your business. All of those things work together. I mean, my tagline is, you are the CEO of your life. And each and every one of us, people say, well, I'm an employee, I'm not a business owner. Yes, you are.
Right.
You are a business owner because your personal financial statement is your family business.
Yep.
And it's not important, it's not as important what you do to make your money, it's what you do to keep it. And so if you are an employee, great, you have a paycheck. Well, you're supposed to be paying and you're supposed to be working on your employer's business. And then you have to pay your debts. Then what's left is is what you use to build your financial health. And my favorite word on earth is assets, and that's what people don't focus on, and that's what they need to focus on, because assets is what creates financial independence.
Agreed. Now you come study this stuff quite often, right?
Yeah, I'm not.
I know you're trying to build that family.
I'm trying to, yeah. I'm not a master of the space or anything, but I read a lot about finance and read a lot about personal finance and those things, and my wife and I are always looking for ways outside of our work with Voice America where we can become even more financially independent, whether it's purchasing a home and renting it out and making a few $100 on that, or whatever the case may be. And but I think sometimes you think so hard about building assets and wanting to make a difference and be better. But I think what you said before is the creme de la creme is saving your money, because no matter how much money you make, if you make $1 million, it's easy to spend $1 million. But if you make $1 million, but you only spend $10, then I think that's really where you could build some serious, not serious wealth, but that's where you can get some stability, anyways, by making sure that you stay within your means and don't ever outspend what you bring in. And
today, I think we're entering an epidemic of what we call Henrys, and it's high earners, not rich yet. So people, they've not an issue with cash flow. They're making a lot of money. They have high income, high commissions, but they're spending it as fast as, or faster than they earn it. And so they are, in essence, living paycheck to paycheck. Never in history have we had so many wealthy people, wealthy income people have zero net worth. And so it's very important for them to focus on how to convert that income into assets that are long-term income producers.
Don't go spend all your money when you make it. Do something with it.
You know what? You're so right on the money with that. What advice would you give to somebody? I mean, those are the people you work with, correct?
Yes.
So what's some of the what would be some advice you would give them without giving your consulting away for? No, that's fine. What I will say is what they see everywhere. The issue is what's in their brain that's keeping them from taking action. Yeah, I can show with them how to reduce expenses, how to increase their income. The issue is why haven't they done it yet? And what is it that's holding them back? So I would recommend they read Outwitting the Devil, because it helps them identify what created those bad habits. But also a small thing you can do that isn't usually found in many of the pundits is when you get a paycheck that's a raise, or you get a raise, or you get a gift, you get like a one-time, instead of spending it, use that to start building your assets. Because if it's new, then you haven't expanded your living expenses to that level yet. So just ignore the fact that it came in and siphon it off into an investment account and start investing and live on the current funds that you've been living on.
If somebody was in debt in that circumstance, would you say that they should use that to pay off their debt first? If they have that like a bonus check or something like that come in, rather than holding on to that to build assets. But if you're still in debt, pay that off, right? So you're not incurring interest on that debt? Not necessarily.
It depends on the debt.
Okay.
It depends on the interest rate of the debt. So I have certain debt that I call good debt, but every quarter I do a review on my investment account and say what kind of interest am I earning on that, and if it's higher than what I'm paying on the debt, then the arbitrage is I'm benefiting from that. If ever the interest on my debt increases to the fact that it's above what I'm earning on the monies I have invested, then I'm going to pay it down. So again,
that makes sense.
Paying attention and being aware of your family business, which is your balance sheet.
Yeah, and I think that what you just mentioned is a little fundamental difference that you have than how Dave Ramsey thinks about certain things, because his answer would have been like, "Oh, pay your debt, pay your debt."
Yeah, he wants you to be. And I have nothing wrong with people who want a debt free.
Sure.
My answer usually to that question.
Your answer is a more fundamentally logical answer, though. I mean, if you have interest that you're building here and it's not going to, cause one thing to swing over the other one, and you're still able to capitalize on it, then it makes sense to do that. It totally makes logical, perfect sense.
But the bigger answer is, can you still sleep at night? So, some people are so debt averse that they need to pay their debt down because it makes them physically ill to know they have debt. Other people are high risk tolerant, and they carry too much debt. And they're the they're the ones I really worry about, because they're not paying attention to what happens to us when the economy goes down.
Right.
So you need to try and think about, how can I recession and inflation proof my assets so that they're going to be there for me.
You know what? You have to watch the finance. Finances are such a again. Assets is key. I agree with that 1,000%.
They're actually very sexy.
Sexy, I like that.
That's, I tell around the world, everybody get their assets are sexy.
Assets are sexy. There it is. We're gonna. You coined that, so right.
It would,
assets are sexy.
It's like if you have, hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you. I have 14 houses. Those are my assets. You're like, oh, I have one. Well, that is very sexy. So yeah, that's cool.
14.
Well, my husband and I have a ranch in northern Arizona. It's called CherryCreekLodge.com. A little side note. But we have about 400 head of Black Angus cattle.
Awesome.
And 329 plus babies. So, and I always, when I post about them, I'll take pictures of them. I say, these are my assets.
Nice.
Tasty assets.
Is that the relaxation place you go to and just unwind? And
it was my husband's dream to have a survival property. It's totally off the grid, all solar powered.
Oh.
We have our own lake, our own well water, and it's a little piece of heaven. It's actually a dude ranch, bed and breakfast, so you can check it out at CherryCreekLodge.com. We do mastermind retreats up there and family reunions. We do weddings. It's a beautiful
Cherry
piece.
Creek.
CherryCreekLodge.com. Mm-hmm. Okay. It's about 3 hours outside Phoenix.
It's a pretty place.
It's just absolutely
I've been on the
gorgeous.
website.
I'm going.
Do you know they have all of this about you on Wikipedia?
Yes, I know.
Yeah,
of course.
I'm trying to get ready for the show, and I'm like, let me just read Wikipedia, and then you go on there, and it's like 4 pages long. It takes you to another Wikipedia page about that other, about the other different kind of business things that you've done, and then they have their own Wikipedia
we
page.
We could have sat here for 15 minutes going through Wikipedia,
Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, I'm definitely a serial entrepreneur. There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely.
That you are. So what you're traveling. You've got. Are there any books that you're working on right now?
Yep, the Think and Grow Rich for Kids, Next Generation, and for Think and Grow Rich for the Magic Key. So those 3 are in process right now. And I'm sure I love to write, so I'm sure there will be others.
Always something. I when you have up in the 20s, the books that you've written, to me that's monumental. I've got one. I'm working on the second one now.
I'm 22 working on the next 3, so I'll have 25 when these are done. But my daughter yesterday told me that I needed to write a book on grandmother's love, and that sounded pretty cool to me. So.
Absolutely.
I read somewhere that one of the top 3 things that an entrepreneur has to have to be successful is the ability to provide structured written words.
Well, I would not disagree with that. It's certainly, I'm not so sure it's structured words, but communication. You have to learn how to communicate appropriately and how to crystallize your message is something that I teach. I teach people how to speak, understanding that only 7% of your communication is the words. Are the words that you say. 93% is how you say it. The inflection. Some people are not good radio hosts because they don't. They talk like this, or they're very slow, and they have lots of dead space. So, it's how you speak, the expressions that you use, how to emphasize points. Of course, you've heard of NLP, those kinds of things. But it's very important for people to understand how to communicate what they do, because today, shorter than ever. You have 7 seconds to make a first impression.
Yep.
And so it is very important if you want to be successful to be able to express who you are.
What happens if you
do.
have a long name and it takes you 7 seconds to say your name? There are people who already don't even want to talk to you.
Just use your first name.
Hi, I'm
Yes.
Joe.
So how many New York Times best-selling books do you have?
Oh, that's probably 6 or 7.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to go back.
What do you have to how do you become a New York bestseller?
Well, that's the one that today pretty much everybody can become an Amazon bestseller. So I have to say I get a little jaundice when people are talking about that, because it's something that you can manipulate based on having
Right.
everybody buy the book at the same time. The New York Times bestseller calculation is top secret, and so it really is. You have to
Okay.
have the, people in X number of zip codes, and they have to be verified purchases, and only certain stores qualify to be part of the New York Times bestseller list. And so it's harder to manipulate. I'll just say that you really need to have a book that truly has sold a ton of copies.
You're bringing up something that's really funny. My wife and I were watching some episodes of Madam Secretary last night, and on the show, her husband is an author, right? And he comes running into the kitchen. He's like, "I'm a New York Times best-selling author." And she's like, "Well, how did you do that?" He's like, "Oh, well, I'm in this really obscure." He writes about religion. He's a religious scholar, and he goes, "Well, yeah, 77 people bought my book. It's the first time 77 people have bought any religious scholar book. So I'm now a New York Times bestseller." So they just brought up that. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah.
That the segment matters too. Like where you're at and how much volume is being sold in a given category or silo as well.
And that's why it's so easy on Amazon, because there's so many subcategories. You can be number one in as six categories deep, but
Right.
it still is number one. So it's something that you can use from a marketing tool. So it's really
That's absolutely right. You can always use that number one for something. It, ups the reputation.
Hey, you know what? As long as you have number one somewhere, I guess that's the good part, right?
Right. Sharon, you know what? It was great to have you on the show today. We're just about to wrap up here. Is there any last words that you would like to share with our audience?
Well, first of all, thank you both for having me. It's been a delight, and I appreciate you working with my schedule. It's always nice to be at home in Arizona, to be able to come visit with you face to face. So delighted that I could be here with you today. And for anybody watching or listening, it's you are the CEO of your own life, and if it is to be, it's up to me. That's a 10-word, 2-letter word sentence. If it is to be, it's up to me. And so make that choice. It is your choice. The choices where you are today is based on the choices you've made before today. If you want something different in your life, you need to make different choices. And we have the choice: we can be victims or we can be victors. And my goal in life is to help people become victors of their own life and for the future of their own family. And that's pay your family first is a derivative of Napoleon Hill's message, pay yourself first, because I truly believe at the end of the day, it's our family's future that should mean the most.
And remember, assets are sexy. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to wrap it up. Ryan?
Yeah, guys, check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Voice America Talk Radio. Of course, all over social media at Radio Ryan 1, at Jeff Spinney 2. And we'll see you guys next week right here on Finding Your Frequency Radio. We'll bring back some more fantastic interviews.